All right. Well, Halitics, I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be with you this morning. Well, it's this afternoon, certainly here on the East Coast where I am just past noon. And we're going to be talking, of course, I mean, it's the big story, right? Is the Dem, what did I call it? Cave, a fold, appeasement. And that's what I went with, appease, because I feel like what really happened is here is that the Democratic Party, the leadership, and the rank and file decided to appease, to give into their donors. I don't think it was even appeasing Trump. You know, you say, well, like the famous appeasement was, of course, in 1938 in Munich when Chamberlain, and I guess it was Daladier, I think was the French representative at that event at Munich when they gave up Czechoslovakia to Hitler. I think, that's considered the classic, the standard issue appeasement. And here, I don't think the appeasement was to Trump necessarily. I don't think the Democrats, I mean, I know Arlen will say how afraid the Republicans are of Trump. Well, Trump's clearly been in recent days and weeks on a downswing, his popularity down. The midterm, or the not even midterms, but the off-year elections last week went very poorly for Trump. It was really a wipeout. Okay, it was a wipeout for Republicans. So you'd think the Democrats would have the cards, and yet they choose your word, fold. I've seen that, like lots of different, pundits, people who podcast like I do, YouTubers, fold, cave, submit. What did I give in, and then appease? And one word I saw, let me see if I can get rid of that countdown. They don't really need the countdown there. One word I saw that I thought was really interesting was, what was it? It wasn't cave. Was it? It was a really interesting word or phrase to describe what the Democrats did. And I thought, sell out, right? Sell out, right? So they sold out to the highest bidder, meaning, again, they took money to give up the fight for the working class and the middle class in America, most particularly the fight to maintain those Obamacare subsidies so that Americans, millions and millions of Americans who can barely afford health insurance with the subsidies, would continue to have them. And now they won't. Right? I mean, it's just not, well, there's going to be a vote next month. So the Republicans promised, John Thune promised in return for the Democrats giving up every other point of leverage that they had, that he would hold a vote to extend the Medicare, subsidies by the government, by the federal government, for one additional year. And my guess, they may well pass it. Why? Because it's in the Republicans' interest to say, hey, look, we saved your subsidies. Vote for us in the midterms. They don't want a bunch of totally pissed off voters coming to vote in November next year and saying, wait a second, we can't even afford health care. My wife died because we didn't have any insurance from something that was treatable. They don't want to have to face we just went bankrupt. I lost my small business because of healthcare costs. That's not something that Republicans want to have to deal with in a year. So they may well say, yeah, it's worth it. Well, in fact, we're going to brag about it in December that, yeah, we did. We voted to extend it. It wasn't the Democrats. It wasn't like the Democrats forced us. It wasn't like they said to us, look, you cut those subsidies back in March, and the only reason the American public still can afford, some Americans, more Americans than not perhaps, can still afford to buy insurance is because of what we, the Democratic Party, did. The Democratic Party just took that argument and flushed it right down the toilet. So did they sell it? Did they appease? I'm not sure if there was payoffs. So would I, imply that they're corporate benefactors, right? And it's very plausible to believe that the Lockheed Martins, who I believe, I don't know if they don't give to Jamie Raskin directly, but they give to many other Democrats. The reason I mentioned Jamie Raskin is he appeared at a Lockheed Martin sponsored pro-Ukraine war event. and spoke there along with, I guess, then bestie Rachel Maddow. So, yes, the Democrats have tons of corporate war manufacturer contributions. And, maybe some of those payments are being delayed. Who knows what's going on with this shutdown going forward, that various contractors are saying, hey, we bought you, now come through for us, end this shutdown. We want those checks to be cut. There's that. There's many other factors. I thought the argument that the impending cuts to air traffic controllers may have been pretty motivating for Democrats to give up the fight, because they travel a lot now. They don't want to have to face all those delays. You're coming from California, you're coming from Hawaii, you got to take a couple flights maybe to get to DC, depending on where you are. You represent, some district in Northern California. You may have to take 1 or 2 flights, 3 flights, a small puddle jumper to Sacramento maybe, and then you fly to O'Hare. Who knows? It's not pleasant. And every one of those extra legs could mean that a delay will make it, really, really miserable for you, rather than just sort of miserable for you, that travel. So I do think the self-interest of those senators played a role. Obviously, the contributions that they get played a role. They want to appease their financiers, the people they truly represent. There's really no good way to spin this. When I first heard about it, and it's not, I guess it's not over yet. It's probably pretty much a done deal. When I first heard about this yesterday, my son was explaining to me. He explains a lot of politics. My wife and I was discussing it. I was thinking, well, the Supreme Court put a freeze on the order that Trump has to provide full SNAP benefits. So maybe the Democrats are a little concerned about cuts to SNAP. They're really worried about the poor, the poorest of the poor families that rely on food supplement, to survive. So maybe that's part of this. Maybe they're not all that bad. There is going to be a vote on the subsidies rather, for Medicare next month. Supposedly, Thune says there will be. So, yeah, maybe you can spin this in a certain way. The federal workers will apparently be getting their back pay. They'll be going back to work. And I'm glad the federal workers, But let me say this. This deal is not something that's going to help the Democrats politically. And I don't think that should be the only decision. I don't think that should be the only factor, for sure. It shouldn't only be, it should really be what's best for the American people. It's hard for me to see this deal as best for the American people. It's going to blow up the deficit for sure. Because remember, the whole reason we're in this pickle, the whole reason there was a shutdown in the first place, because the Republicans ran up against that hard government debt limit that requires them either to cut spending, to raise revenues, i.e. taxes, both, or to have the Congress, specifically the Senate, raise the debt ceiling. And so we're seeing ever greater debt, which I, by the way, do believe is a problem. I know some liberals are, there's the whole modern monetary theory. Oh, we control the presses. We can just keep printing more and more money. And we've seen how well that worked, say, in Weimar Germany, when you had massive inflation. You create more of anything, you reduce its value. So obviously, more money means inflation. It doesn't mean you don't raise the money supply a little bit. There are times when inflation makes sense, but too much government spending is a problem. Printing up more dollars is a problem. Can be very much so. So there really was no good way to cave to the Republican demands that we let the American public, the Democrats let the American public see cuts to essential programs, right? As well as slashing taxes on the rich. But that's what the Democrats just agreed to. Or it looks like they will agree to. I mean, I understand there's more votes going on. If you want to join me on this, 240-242-5646, I do have a hard stop at 1. So this isn't going to be one of those programs where I just go on and on. for an extra half hour. It's not going to be like that. Oh, and by the way, if you're wondering about Mondays with Carlos is still a co-host on Halitics. We have not stopped that. Last week he couldn't make it. He had a appointment. He had a work obligation, and the same goes for today. But we have rescheduled Carlos. I have him in this calendar for this Friday for the free-for-all. So that's fine. And I would just note, but we are anticipating Carlos, the left-handed leftist. By the way, you can check out his podcast. His doesn't do them every day. He does them once a week. And there's a really cool one. I think he's teasing. He's going to post later with Michaela Wilkes, who ran for Congress a few years ago against Steny Hoyer, corporate Dem, warmonger, corrupt Dem leader Steny Hoyer. So that's pretty interesting. I think I would like to hear that for sure. I will very much look forward to the left-handed leftist Carlos Childs with Michaela Wilkes. All right, we're going to get into more discussion, of course, about this cave, this appeasement. Again, appeasing your donors, not your voters, the people who give you money. And there's some real interesting conversation around whether we should hold all the Democrats in the Senate responsible, or even in Congress. Now, before we get, now you see this, the killing continues. Israel's genocidal rampage through Gaza has not ended, despite the ceasefire that Trump so-called, that Trump trumpets. Child among Palestinians killed as Israeli air raids drones target Gaza. They're still holding truck supplies out. You can look at that extraordinary amount of damage, destruction done. I think I showed you a video last Friday at the free-for-all of a German city, Cologne, and what the Allied bombers did to Cologne, or Köln as they call it in Germany. It was not as bad. That's just how bad what Israel has done is. And I'm so appalled by the fact that anyone still supports this country. I'm appalled by it. I'm disgusted. I'm sickened by it. I get, look, if you have business interests, if you're bribed, like Trump is bought and paid for by Miriam Adelson. But if you're just like an ordinary rando like me, a normie, I don't like that expression, but okay, how you could ever support Israel at this point is beyond me. It really is. Oh, I'm looking at myself. It says I'm Hal Ginsberg. No, I'm not Hal. I'm Hal. Hal, H-A-L. 240-242-5646. Would love to talk to you if you want to join me. And I'll try to look for any posts or comments, commentary, and the like from on YouTube. Hopefully it got properly posted. I've had some internet issues today too. Yeah, there it is. Left and center agree. So that's the title. Dems effed up bigly, or did they? So I think from the standpoint of the American public, of course they did, right? What they did is going to hurt people, a lot of people. It also will hurt them politically. Now, I get the SNAP is an important issue, and I take that very seriously. The well-being of the American federal worker cohort is very important, and their situation is going to be improved, I guess. But at bottom, voters right now, the majority of Americans, or at least a very large percentage of Americans, they're really just more concerned about health care. And I do think Democrats should center poor Australian working people. So that includes, of course, the SNAP folks in Appalachia, in inner cities. But to the extent that you do look at politics a little bit here, first of all, it looks like the courts may force Trump to pay those SNAP benefits, whether he wants to or not. Second of all, I think politically it really hurt. It's clearly hurt Trump. His threat, right, to cut the neediest, many of whom voted for him maybe in states like Kentucky, West Virginia, where there's a high percentage of rural poor, Mississippi. That is important to bear in mind. But it's also important to bear in mind that those who didn't vote, they might just get up off their butt and say, you know what? As bad as the Democrats are, and let's face it, they suck. Trump's even worse. We can't vote. We have to vote against the party that took away our lifeline. The Democrats just pulled that argument right out from under themselves. So this is just an awful mistake. So let's look at the 8. Now, one of the comments we've heard, and I'm going to play some videos from two of my not favorite, I don't want to say least, two podcasters, YouTubers, call them what you like, that I don't like very much. I mean, they are Democrats. They would insist they're Democrats. I think they'll both insist they're progressives. I question that, but I did think their takes were well worth sharing with you. And that's why I'm going to do that in a moment. We'll hear from Park Rose Permaculture and Vosh. So there are the 8, right? The embarrassing 8. Dick Durbin. By the way, Dick Durbin, I always thought him as pretty far to the left, pretty liberal. But no. Jackie Rosen, Fetterman, of course, voted to end the shutdown. Catherine Cortez Masto. So 2 Nevadans. Neither one is up for election next year. Jean Shaheen, New Hampshire. She would be. Her seat is going to be contested, but she won't be fighting for it in 26. Hassan Magasan already, I think she was elected last year during the Trump win, so she's not up for a couple more years until 30. And then Tim Kaine of Virginia. He is not running in 26. His seat is not open in 26. So his 6-year term will not end in 26. And that's really important to bear in mind. Same with Angus King. So there you go. Not one of those Democrats who bucked what the American public clearly, what we've been demanding. We want you to fight back and we want you to stand on some principles. I think healthcare, what could be a better? Now, I think there could be more principles in healthcare, right? I was reading Nate Silver, another not favorite, but he does write well. He does, and he has interesting takes, so I'll give him that. He said that the Democrats should have been, he criticizes the whole strategy. He says, yeah, in the end, it was working, right? He basically, as a former poker player, professional poker player, he looks at everything from strategy. Is it winning or losing? Not is it good for the people of this country, but does this particular strategy lead to wins politically, I think is what he means. And he had to say, yeah, I didn't think it was a good idea. I didn't think the American public would like the shutdown. American public doesn't usually like shutdowns. They don't like shutdowns when it's Republicans who are threatening to shut down the budget if the Democrats don't slash programs for poor Australian working people. That is true. Because we've seen most shutdowns of recent years have been led by Republicans who are saying you give too much to the poor, there's too many SNAP benefits, there's too much supplemental assistance for these healthcare boondoggles. We got to get rid of that stuff. You got to slash the federal workforce. No more cost of living adjustments for Medicare. That's the Republican logic. That's their talking points when they shut down government. And unsurprisingly, Americans who many depend on their Social Security every month, who depend on Medicare for life-giving medicine, who depend on SNAP for their families, they don't like the Republican argument. But they did like the Democratic argument, which is, hey, we're fighting to maintain those subsidies that you need to pay for your insurance. Now, of course, the real problem is the insurance is way, way, way too high. And what we're doing with the Obamacare is subsidizing the for-profit healthcare industry, which is awful. I mean, that's a terrible thing. But nevertheless, what people are thinking first and foremost is, I just want to be able to pay for my health insurance. I just want to make sure I have health insurance. Not, is it really right that all this money that's going to subsidize my health care insurance is just going to the billionaire for-profit healthcare insurer stockholders? Of course, that's wrong, but how can you blame people who are barely trying to survive for not grokking that, for not getting that? So, the real issue is Democrats need to, I think the real issue is don't vote for Democrats, right? Vote for Greens. Vote for people who are actually going to take on the billionaire class, who aren't controlled by them. But this shutdown was working pretty well, actually, for Democrats. And I think for the left, the Mamdani win was a big deal. The fact that you had redistricting in Virginia, you had the redistricting approved. Well, you'll have redistricting in Virginia because the Democratic majority was maintained and enlarged in Virginia. And in California, you got that Prop 50 success. So it does look like the Democrats might do pretty well in next year's midterms, given that they can gerrymander seats in their blue states to counter the gerrymandered seats in Republican red states. So that actually could be not the worst thing. Now, I know you'll hear from some of the dyed-in-the-wool Dem haters, and I'm pretty much one of them, right? But you'll hear from the Green Party loyalists and the Antifa crowd that you can't vote for the Democrats. They're just as bad. They're this other side of the coin. I basically agree 95% of the time. But there's a 5% where you have a Mamdani who I believe there's a real chance. I'm saying will happen. I know that Revolutionary Blackout Network, Nick Cruz and his staff, his team seem to believe that Mamdani is going to sell us out, that he's going to make inroads with, accept the support and the blandishments of the billionaire class. And they might be right. I'm not saying they're wrong, but I'm still a little bit hopeful. I'm still a little bit optimistic. I'm even like someone like an AOC who's really just a cringeworthy person, right? I mean, she just really embarrasses herself and steps in it every other day. But even someone like that, if there were more true progressives in Congress, which I think could really happen next year. I mean, you're seeing people like Plattner who are running against the Dem establishment, right? That's Plattner is saying, I'm not going to vote for Schumer to be my Congress member, to be my leader. I'm sorry, to be the Senate majority or minority leader. I'm not going to vote for him. So you see more and more people questioning that, the loyalty to Schumer. You're seeing, again, people who are running directly against AIPAC, people like Cori Bush. She's running for re-election, take back the seat she lost to Wes Bell, who I think got like 8 million. He got more in the last election cycle than anybody else in AIPAC's successful attempt, from their standpoint, successful to destroy Cori Bush's career, to derail her and to replace her with a Zionist stooge. So that was successful. But there could be real repercussions in the end. What the Democratic establishment did, what they did is they actually made it less likely, not only that Democrats would take back Congress next year, but they made it less likely that progressive Dems will win and will take back some power, will achieve some power within the party. And that, believe you me, is a huge feature in their efforts. That's what they want. They want to derail the left. The Mamdani win scares them. They are really afraid. Their attitude is better Cuomo, who's not even really, a corrupt Dem. I mean, I know that's certainly an oxymoron, right? Or is that not? Is that no? It's a redundancy. I guess an oxymoron would be an honest Dem. Well, maybe Mamdani's an honest Dem. We don't. But a corrupt Dem, that's just a redundancy. So that's who they want. They want the Cuomos to win. And if Cuomo doesn't win, then they just as soon have a Republican win. That's the people you're seeing in that image right there. I wanted to make this point. Okay, so Tim Kaine is one of the Republicans, and he isn't the more concerned. I was really surprised when I heard it was Kaine. Or what I said was to my son when he said, "Oh yeah, Tim Kaine, he's voting to end the shutdown." I said, "Really?" I said, "Well, then Mark Warner, who's his colleague from Virginia, his Democratic colleague is Mark Warner, a multimillionaire. I don't know, it was worth $100 million, some big amount like that. I don't know how much exactly. Mark Warner has always been to the right of Tim Kaine. And yet Mark Warner did not vote to end the shutdown. So why? And there's an argument. There was, by the way, Kane had sort of an argument which isn't complete BS. Like, it isn't just a pretext for appeasing billionaire donors. The argument is, hey, we've got a lot of government workers who live in Virginia, especially Northern Virginia, and I represent them, and they voted for me mostly, which is true, they did. And I don't want to throw them under the bus. I get the arguments for preserving the Medicare subsidy, Obamacare subsidies, right? We don't have Medicare for all of the Obamacare subsidies. I get those arguments, Kane might say, but he could also say, but, these workers, the federal workers who are being furloughed now, who aren't getting their full pay, it's a problem for them, of course, and that's bad. I represent them. It's also a problem for the economy in my state. So that's sort of an argument Kane can muster, or a Virginia senator can muster in support of the deal. But Mark Warner, the more conservative, the true corporate Dem in Virginia, actually did not vote to end the shutdown. So why is that? Because he's running for U.S. Senate next year. They know full well that this doesn't play well. They know full well that Democratic base finds their actions reprehensible. We all see through this. So Mark Warner sits down with Tim Kaine, and they're like, how do we end this? And Kaine's like, I know. A lot of our donors really hate this. The billionaires don't like it. Hey, we don't have to fly. Because I think Warner lives in Alexandria, so he doesn't fly anywhere when it comes to Congress, maybe for business. I'm not sure where Kaine lives. I think he lives in Richmond. So, but he probably takes the Amtrak or what have you, not flies. In any event, the issue of the air traffic controllers is a little bit less relevant for them. But even there, and I just realized this because, I wasn't thinking, but now I'm thinking, there's two major airports in Northern Virginia that carry a tremendous amount of traffic. Those being Dulles, right, the international airport, and then Reagan National, which I believe also is international. I'm not certain about Reagan National being international. Used to be national. But both airports carry a lot of traffic. Those are big drivers of the Northern Virginia economy, especially Dulles. You go out that Dulles access road and you see Toll Road access road. There's both. You see the Google, and you see all the big tech companies that line that highway. And they depend on a lot of air traffic into Dulles because, they're executives. They bring people in from all over the world. If you're Google, I think Amazon's got something out there too. Maybe Amazon's is actually near National. So Amazon's international. They bring in people all the time for conferences, for meetings. So they're dependent on those airports, going full bore. And again, those senators aren't going to, they don't want to hear. They don't want to hear from Jeff Bezos or Sergey Brin or whoever from Google. Or even the Cupertino group, the Apple people, because I think they've got something out there too on that highway. And so does Microsoft. They all do. It's kind of like a little mini Silicon Valley. So I don't want to hear from all the billionaires who throw them money like it's, confetti, which for them it is, which for the donors it is, but not for the Democrat representatives. They don't want to hear complaints. Why aren't you opening the government? We need you to open the government. We need you to do this. So they go ahead and open it. But to protect themselves, Kaine and Warner sit down, and Warner's like, do we have enough votes if I don't support it? Because I want to be able to run next year and say, yeah, I didn't support that. I didn't support to open the government. And you could say, well, but in Northern Virginia, it's probably more popular. Maybe not in Southern Virginia. Maybe not in Richmond. Maybe not in some of those purple areas that Abigail Spanberg, who, by the way, came out, now the new governor-elect in Virginia, came out and said she likes this. She's glad they're ending the shutdown. So she's a real corporate Dem, right? Not somebody we should be pleased with. But this is what the Democrats do. They figured it out. they decided, hey, we're going to support an end to the shutdown, but we're going to figure it out so we can do that without hurting ourselves. We'll just pick and choose. We'll cherry pick congressmen, senators who don't have to face the wrath of the voters next year. And in 3 years, who knows? They'll have forgotten all about it. Okay, I wanted to play this clip. I was really intrigued by, I do watch, now I want to say this about Park Rose Permaculture. I don't know I should know her name. I think she tells you. I think she does a good job. She does these short clips. She's always standing there. They tend to be 9x16s. She's pretty talented, I think. She's pretty skillful. By the way, we've got a surprise caller. It's Arlen. Arlen, do me a favor before I take you on. Just hold for 1 sec. I'll get to you. Actually, you know what? It's Arlen. I can't do that to Arlen. Hey, Arlen, how you doing today?
I'm okay, but I'm not very happy about what the Democrats did.
Have you been listening to my diatribe in which I've been raising probably a lot of issues you may have thought of yourself in terms of your anger towards them?
Well, a little bit. haven't watched the whole hour, but, I see a couple things,
So what is it, Arlen, that you're particularly peeved at? And is there anything in specific you can narrow it down?
Well, what I want to say is that the Democrats were winning, and now they decided to lose. I mean, they had something really good, and now they don't anymore. They've kind of ruined the good, the good ratings that they've been getting and all the advantages they've been getting, and they threw it away.
Do you think it's possible, Arlen? I made this point. I was thinking we could talk about this a little bit tomorrow, but you may have missed it. But I made the point, I want to get your reaction, that losing an advantage may have been part of the reason that the center-right Democratic senators actually went along with this deal, decided to reopen the government. Is there fear, legitimate fear, among those Democratic senators that Mamdani's win could signal a real leftward shift among Democratic voters, and some of their seats might be at risk? This may slow down any movement towards the left wing of the Democratic Party.
Well, certainly, I know there's a lot of people that are upset with Mamdani, but I don't think that's, the main reason for doing this. And I'm still trying to figure out what the advantage is for the Democrats.
Do you think it's just, this is what I said, Arlen, I think the main reason is pressure from the donor class. The billionaires who fund the Democratic candidates' campaigns don't like the shutdown for a variety of reasons, and they want it to end.
Well, that might be a good reason, and you might be right about that, but at this point I can't be sure. But I noticed that all the people that voted to stop the shutdown are not up for re-election. They realize their stand is unpopular. So, it just doesn't seem like a smart thing to do. I just heard Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is upset with this, of course, because we're giving up the possibility of, stronger health care, for American people. So, there's a lot of disappointed progressives, and I'm one of them.
Do you think, Arlen, that there'll be any movement away from the Democratic Party by progressives like yourself and people further maybe to your left, but not as far left as I am, or at least not as prepared to abandon the Democrats as I'm? Do you think some will say, you know what, I've had it with this party. It was great that Mamdani won, but they've decided to pull the rug out from under themselves. I can't do it anymore.
I don't quite see it that way. I'd like to see how the Democrats react to those particular senators that voted to, stop the shutdown. And, if Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries find a way to criticize and, these particular senators, then we might be okay. But there's a lot of uncertainty right now. I don't know exactly, what all the ramifications are, but I don't see anything good in this.
All right, one more point, Arlen. I just was curious. You're saying you think it's too early to say that there might be a movement away from the Democrats among disaffected or angry leftists and progressives who still support the Democratic Party. Do you see? I guess I will say this: Chris Cillizza, and you said this. You don't see any reason. You can't understand it. I was interested by Chris Cillizza, more of a centrist commentator on CNN. He said the same as you. He couldn't see any explanation for this. Doesn't the money then become the obvious answer that they're simply bought and paid for by the billionaire class, those Democrats?
Well, it will be interesting to see what kind of money flows into their particular campaigns. If all of a sudden we see a big upsurge in what they're getting, then you're right. You're on. That's probably the reason. Otherwise, I don't think they're helping the American people. That's for sure. They may be helping the donor class, but the rest of the working class people, they're not helping at all.
Yeah, it's very, very upsetting. One more point, Arlen. This is a question I had for the viewers, but I'll ask you this. I was actually really disappointed that the deal didn't include. I mean, the whole deal sucks. But one thing it seemed to me was such a low hanging fruit for the Democrats would be that there has a condition that Adelita Grijalva be sworn in to the House immediately. And I understand they're negotiating with the Senate. So what? You say to Thune, go to your counterpart, go to Mike Johnson and say, hey, we got a chance to reopen the government. This is what Trump wants. This is what we want. Just go ahead and let Adelita, take her seat.
Boy, what's going on in House of Representatives is probably the most interesting to me anyway. Are they going to come back? Are they going to what are they going to do about all the things that you're talking about? Seating that particular representative, which would help the Democrats, and also, I also noticed something that Giselle Maxwell is saying that she's looking for a commutation from Donald Trump. So, there's a lot of things going on right now, and I can't figure out what all of them mean.
Right. Well, that's a good point, too, because obviously that goes to the Epstein files and the pressure that some Republicans and many Democrats have brought to release those files, right, to pass a law. And Mike Johnson in the House has point blank refused to put that up for a vote. There are a certain number of Republicans, MTG, Massey, maybe some others who would vote to release those files. That's another pressure point the Democrats could have brought and said, hey, you want us to end the shutdown, release the files and, release the Kraken, release the files and also let Adelita take her seat.
Yeah, I think that Johnson must be under tremendous pressure from Trump not to let those files come out, and he's probably been threatened with losing his job, and that's certainly a big part of this. I think we just have.
Well, what do you want to see in the wake of this disaster? What would you like to see Democrats do? You want to see them call out? That's what this Park Rose permaculture woman, who I've got her face on the screen, but it's blocked by thoughts on tonight's tremendous betrayal by Senate Dems. She argues that the only way that she doesn't buy that it was just those 8 senators. She doesn't accept that if your senator voted no, and I agree with this 100%, that they weren't in on the deal. That people like Mark Warner in Virginia, Schumer, by the way, Schumer was apparently on board the deal, was going to support it, and then at the last moment decided he would not support the deal to reopen the government. My strong suspicion, Arlen, as he's running, is that it's all because he's probably going to be facing a contested primary next year for U.S. Senate.
About that. Yeah, and I think people are looking at Schumer and saying, "Oh, yeah, he may be against what they did, but he obviously couldn't control them. He didn't have any power to do anything about it, so he's not strong enough to be the leader of the Democrats in the Senate." And
either actually against it, and that's why he voted no, or what I believe more probably supported it, but didn't want to vote in support of ending it, ending the shutdown, because he knew it would be a weapon used against him in the primary next year.
Well, yeah, and then same with, Hakeem Jeffries. I wonder how much support he's going to get from progressives, because, we'll have to see what he does about, when this House of Representatives comes back. But, yeah, the leadership of the Democratic Party is certainly questionable and needs to be looked at very carefully.
All right, Arlen, unless there's anything else, I'm going to let you go. I got about 15 more minutes. I got a hard stop at 1, and I want to play a couple of video clips before I call it a show.
I'm good. Thank you for allowing me to say my piece.
Always great to hear Arlen. He's always welcome. That's why I went to him rather than playing this video. But let me play it now.
Approval rating. There is no trust between Democratic voters and their elected representatives, especially in the Senate. Whatever tiny little sliver there was has been completely incinerated by this action today. And it's even worse because so many people are like, I can't trust that my senator was going to be a no vote. I can't trust that my senator was opposed to this action. If your senator voted no, I would not be like, mad props, you're amazing, you're the best. I'd be like, oh, okay. Couple ways you can prove to me that you were not actually in support of this. Number one, if this is really just like 8 senators who broke off from the caucus, and this isn't what Chuck Schumer wanted in the first place, then that shows that he's a completely feckless and inept leader who cannot whip his own party to vote as a bloc.
All right, I'm going to stop it there. So that's what Arlen was saying, right, is that he just failed completely, that they probably didn't want this deal to go through, but, he voted against it. And she's saying maybe, but, he was on record, apparently, at least according to Axios, as supporting the deal. So either he's totally ineffective or he just made a backroom deal with other Democrats that he would not vote for it because he's running for president, running for U.S. Senate next year, and he wants to stay in the Senate. He wants to stay majority leader or minority leader, probably what he'll be, which is what he is now. So I don't believe he had any integrity, any principles whatsoever. I think he acted purely out of self-interest. But so does Parkrose permaculture. And this was a revelation for me. I've never heard her just go off on Democrats so aggressively. She really, really did. And this is a big change. So she's saying, by the way, if you don't like what your Democratic senator did, or you don't like what the Democratic Senate did, don't assume your senator is good, even if they voted against ending the shutdown. Don't assume that. Don't assume that if your senator is Ruben Gallego, that he really is against ending the shutdown just because he voted not to shut down the government. Maybe we don't know what deal he made, what deal he cut. Tell those senators that if they really want your trust, they've got to take down Democratic leadership right now. I was really surprised that she took such a hardline position, because this wasn't even, by the way, this is a Parkrose permaculture again. This isn't like, years ago. This is something she posted, I have 7 months, totally defending the ultimate establishment Dem, somebody who never once stood up to the billionaires, never once was willing to buck her party establishment, meaning Kamala Harris. And I was surprised. I hadn't seen this video earlier, but when I played it, I was like, wow, Parkrose has really, really changed her tune in just a few months. Here we go. Kamala did not betray us. Extraordinary statement. She didn't betray us. She betrayed us at every opportunity. I'm not going to do anything different than Joe Biden. Let's be clear here. What's going on in the Middle East is because Hamas killed all these innocent people in Israel. No recognition of the crimes of Israel, no acknowledgement, no, I'm going to support fracking. Yes, we can have fracking and still build our economy. No, that's not why we were against fracking, because we can't have fracking and a healthy planet. but she didn't either get that or wouldn't say it. I don't know. I don't give her a lot of credit. But Park Rose, who just told you we've got to get rid of Schumer, he's totally ineffective. He betrayed the American public, but Kamala did not.
Before a leadership summit for Black women. Do you know what else she said in that speech? She said, I am not going anywhere. Last night, Kamala gave a speech in front of a leadership conference for Black women, and she said that fear is contagious, but hope is also contagious. And she also said in that 8-minute long speech, I am not going anywhere. And I posted.
So why is that supposed to give us hope? I really I love that. Well, I'm not going anywhere. Well, has she gone? She kind of came out of hibernation, as I recall, to go before an incredibly friendly audience. And when she went on her book tour more recently, it was a disaster, blaming everyone else for her loss. And yet Park Rose totally caping for her. Oh, she's wonderful. Look at how she went before these women who are exactly like her, successful Black women. And she went before them and she told them, I'm not going anywhere. And isn't that wonderful? Did she tell them what her policy proposals would be if she ran again, or when she runs again, since she's not going anywhere? Presumably she's going to run again. What is she going to do differently? Did she talk about that, Park Rose? I didn't hear any of that. Nothing. Just like sort of self-aggrandizing statements. Oh, I warned you how bad things would be. Well, if you really cared about the American people and you were so afraid of Trump, why didn't you propose policies that would have been popular, that might have gotten you elected? Let's see if we can get that here. Let's get that back up here.
Talk about the good things that she's doing. I don't want to make her into that kind of a figure. It is not up to Black women to put their bodies, their lives on the front line to save the rest of us.
It is up, though, to somebody who's running for president to articulate policies that will make things better in this country for voters. If you want to get elected, then you have an obligation, it seems to me, or let me put it a different way. If you want to get elected, then you should articulate very clearly, concisely, and specifically how you will make life better for the people of this country. And hopefully enough will buy what you're selling and elect you. Trump, for all the terrible things he's done, did make specific case for his candidacy. He said, hey, for his presidency, he said, hey, I will end the inflation, and we'll have tariffs. Now, tariffs generally lead to inflation, not deflation, but tariffs are still important. We should still have tariffs. Trump made arguments, and I don't think they were good arguments. I didn't buy them. I didn't vote for him. But Kamala didn't even do that. And Park Rose is sitting there saying, oh, well, she's a Black woman. She doesn't have to save us. Well, she's running for president. I think that's what we want her to try to do. I don't think it has anything to do with her color. I don't think it has anything to do with her gender or her sex. I think it has to do with the fact that she wants to be president.
For Black women. And she said that fear is contagious, but hope is also contagious. And she also said in that 8-minute long speech, I am not going anywhere. And I posted a clip from that speech, and I was like, y'all need to watch this. And I was not thrilled with the responses from white women.
So this is the kind of thing I hate. I hate when you start saying, well, from white women, right? Like they're somehow you're going to attribute to an entire group of people a sentiment. I could argue just the that is, I'm not thrilled with the response of some Black women to Kamala, because I believe some Black women embraced Kamala because she's a Black woman and didn't even look for a moment at her policies or care about them, or to the extent that they did, weren't going to be bothered by that. Now, I certainly wouldn't attribute that to all African-American women, not in the least. But I guess there are a few I could say that about. But you know what? That's how they voted. Whatever. Did the women who criticized Harris have legitimate arguments against her, Park Rose? Or did they just say, oh, well, she's a Black woman, so we're not going to vote for her? That's what Obama said, right, to the Black male voters, some of whom were not, surveys show did not support Harris nearly as much as they had supported Obama or even Biden. Or maybe Hillary, I don't know. But Obama says, well, I don't think all of you are feeling a sister to be president. I think he said that, something like that. Well, why weren't they feeling her? He was implying it's because Harris is a woman. But maybe it's because her policies were really bad. Maybe it's because actually, tragically, a high percentage of African-American men have been incarcerated. And she was a lock them up and throw away the key prosecutor. She was a prosecutor who refused to reduce prison overcrowding in the teeth of a federal order to do so. So maybe that's part of it. Maybe there were some legitimate reasons that black men didn't like Kamala Harris. But Obama says, no, it's just because she's a woman, a sister. Well, is that what you're saying, Parkrose, is the only reason that the women who criticized you didn't like Harris? Is because she was black?
On that video. Maybe as a white woman, I should know by now what we're like. Let me give this comment as an example. I think this person blocked me after I called out her anti-blackness. I'm frustrated with how quiet she's been, meaning Kamala. If there was ever a time we needed a leader from the left to step up, it's been the past 2 months, and she's been MIA. That feels like a betrayal.
So that's ridiculous. So she called her anti-blackness out? What was anti-black about that statement? Nothing. Not one thing was anti-black about that post. It's absurd. But this is the kind of contortions that the Democratic liberal class goes through to justify someone as bad as Kamala Harris as their to support. That's what they have to go through. Attribute racism, attribute sexism, Obama, right? Attribute sexism to people who don't support Harris. It's ridiculous. It's incredibly counterproductive. But this is what I find so interesting. So Parkrose, after spending all that time insulting, criticizing, attacking anyone who has any problems at all with Kamala Harris, she goes after Chuck Schumer. She goes after the Democratic elite. She's critical of them. She says, wait, they betrayed us. The Democrats have betrayed us. So is she now prepared to say, wait a second, we got to do something better. We got to go move on. We've got to abandon the Dems. I don't think so. I don't see that happening. She demands new leadership. But what about her taking some responsibility? This is something that I just always want people to do. Take responsibility for what you did. You were all in the bag for Harris. You were constantly attacking, and I remember your videos. I didn't see that one until today, Parkrose, but in the past, you've always been there to step up to cape for Kamala, no matter how bad she was. Are you prepared to call yourself out? Are you prepared to say, wait a second, these Dems really do suck? Maybe those people who said, we've got to look at Jill Stein, maybe they were onto something. Are you going to do that? You want people to go after the Democratic establishment, and I get it. That's fine. I'm with you. But what about yourself? You going to take some responsibility for how you betrayed us, how you failed the movement by calling for everyone, regardless, to support Kamala Harris, no matter how bad her policies are? Are you going to do that? Because I don't think so. All right, real quick, I want to play Vosh. Vosh is not one of my favorites either. I don't like him any more than I like Parkrose. I just thought, and I just was like so intrigued by Parkrose's video where she was really, really good calling out the Democratic elites and then completely fails to acknowledge her own role in Trump's presidency and in the continued control that they have over the party. All right, here's Vosh, another least favorite of mine.
Democrats have been maintaining their position on the argument that they're fighting to protect Americans' health care. In fairness, they're correct. Agreeing to continue the funding without that provision secured is insane. It would cause so much suffering. But that's what the Democrats have held firm on. So far, the shutdown has been politically disastrous for Trump. Absolutely nightmarish. It led to...
And that's true, by the way. It really has hurt him. His popularity way down. No question about it.
Defeat last Tuesday. It led to him getting fucking booed at the NFL game today. It is.
Right, I love this, the effing, right? You hear that from him. You hear that from Klinsky. What's the matter with these guys? They can't use just regular words. Yeah, Trump got booed. I don't know. Is that because of the shutdown? Maybe. Probably a lot of federal workers, but he would have been booed anyway. Politicians are always booed when they go to these sporting events. Maybe not Obama now that he's out of power.
Led to like mass shifts in popularity against him. You know, what's happening right now is working for the Democrats and for the American people. But I guess some cuck-ass fucking Democrat senators have been, you know, internally considering whether or not it might be beneficial to completely cave to the Republicans. What is happening here is that they're arguing for agreeing with the Republicans and voting for the Republican version of the bill, which includes funding through SNAP, on the condition that Republicans hold a vote on the ACA tax credits next month. Not that they vote for it, not that they vote yes, not that it gets passed, just that they'll, you know, consider it. So what the Republicans get is capitulation, everything they want, and an end to one of the greatest like periods of political terror for Trump he's ever experienced. And what Democrats get is a promise that in a month Republicans will be nice. That's what these people.
So he's spot on. He's 100% correct. It was a terrible cave. It was terrible appeasement by the Democrats. They did it almost certainly to appease their donors. And you can see that the decision by those Democrats who are up for election next year not to sign on to it shows how they know it's unpopular. They know it's not what the American public want, but, you know, hey, we will do what our donors want, and this will get us where we want to be, which is lots of money from them. And hey, if we lose, there'll be a nice golden parachute, whereas there'd be no golden parachute whatsoever. We stand up to them. If we keep fighting for the American people, pretty soon, those corporate monopolists and oligopolists, they're not going to be on our side anymore because they get it perfectly well. They get what a class war is. You're either on the side of the poor, struggling, working, and middle class of this country, or on the side of the billionaire class. And if we don't give in on this issue, if we continue to fight for affordable health care for Americans, if we keep doing that, then the billionaire class will recognize that we're really not on their side and that they're not going to reward us with, you know, golden showers like they did Obama, for example. Okay, Vosh. Now, this guy, he is really a piece of work. I'm just going to play this clip real quick and then I got to run out of here. But so he's really irritated because he says, hey, all they're getting is a vote. There's no promises. The Democrats are getting a vote on Medicare, on Obamacare subsidies. This is all they're getting. There's no promise that the Republicans will pass it. It's basically a nothing burger. Why is this such a big, why would you shut down the government for that? Here's Vosh talking about force the vote. When all the Democratic, pundit, the people on the left, like myself, like you can see Brianna Joy Gray there, we were just saying, yeah, there should be a vote. If you want us to support Nancy Pelosi to continue to be the Speaker of the House or to take over as Speaker of the House, then you know what? Here's what you got to do. Hold a vote on Medicare for all. We want politicians who get all that money from big pharma, for-profit healthcare. We want them on the record. That's all we're asking. A policy that is incredibly popular, that most American people want. And not only is it popular, popularity is important, but it's also effective. It's the right policy. Even if it were unpopular, it would still be the right policy. But it is the right policy despite all the, it is popular despite all the efforts by media, corporate media, all the billions spent to try to turn you against Medicare for all. You still support it. But the Democrats refuse, even in 21, to hold a vote on it. A vote that, by the way, Vosh, I guess, seems to think doesn't even matter. Here he is.
Force the Vote fans and Brianna Joy Gray fans are fucking subhuman pieces of shit.
So this is the kind of class. Like, when I hear that stuff, I'm like, really? Why would anyone? And he's got a huge channel. Like, what is there about that people find appealing? I find it so bizarre. By the way, I want to say hi to News Us, Emogi, and I think we had another person in the chat as well. Vosh bad. Yes, he is. Bad, he is. All right, 240-242-5646, but I probably won't take any more calls today. You can call tomorrow. He is bad. He got this one right. The shutdown, cave, the appeasement by Democrats was terrible. But you got to understand, Vosh, how you've caved, how you folded, how you gave in to the Democratic elites over and over again. saying you have to vote for Kamala, which you did also on that clip, but you did, saying there can't be any force to vote. And then not only that, you attack a real pretty darn dyed-in-the-wool leftist, Brianna Joy Gray.
Only in it for the aesthetic and for the grift. Dipshit retards like Brianna here. There are
So DS, he calls her a DS retard because she supported force the vote. And this is again a guy who's saying, hey, the vote isn't even a big deal. What they should be forcing, the Democrats, is actually an extension of the Obamacare subsidies. He's right. And I could make the same argument that we should have been demanding in return for a vote for Nancy Pelosi passing Medicare for all, but you couldn't really get that. You couldn't, that wouldn't happen. But it was absolutely the right policy in 2021. You can see how Bosch has done a 180 because now he's angry at Democrats for giving in to the Republicans, but zero acknowledgement of his own complicity, his own culpability. And people like that, I just don't respect. I don't think that we should respect them. I think they should be, I don't want to say canceled. He might say something smart tomorrow, but for now, he's clearly demonstrated he's the grifter. He's the one who'll say whatever he thinks his audience wants to hear, although whatever Democratic leadership wants to hear. And in this case, when it comes to going after the Democratic cavers, the folders, the sellouts, he's right. But he's been wrong far too many times, and he should be willing to acknowledge that. I'll be back tomorrow.